This is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here with my August wrap-up. So this is going to look a little odd. It's going to look like I hardly read anything in August because this is what I was working on most of the month. And I'm not finished with it yet, so it won't count as for August. But as you can imagine, this took up the entire month, just about. So I only fit in a few other small books kind of in between, including 2 audios. So first, I started out the month reading The Summer Guest by Justin Cronin. This was a selection from my book group, but it was actually from my own shelves. I was the one that presented the choices for August. And the group chose this, which I was thrilled with because I bought this book. It takes place in Maine, and I bought it in Maine at a wonderful little indie bookstore in Bar Harbor. And I haven't been there since 2014. So that's how long this book has been sitting on my shelf. So I was thrilled with the chance to finally read it. Now, you may recognize the author. Justin Cronin is the very famous author of the Passage trilogy, which are sci-fi, horror, thriller books. This is not that. This is completely different from that. As you can probably tell from the cover, this is a beautiful, kind of gentle story set in the North Woods of Maine. And it's about family and connections and relationships, loss and love. Everybody in the group really enjoyed this book. So the basic premise is that it begins back in the 40s. So it goes from the 40s all the way to the present. It begins in the 40s when a man named Joe returns from World War II. He was wounded and badly disfigured in his face during the war. And he was a lawyer in Boston, but he just feels like he needs to get away with his family. So he takes his wife and their baby, who's also named Joe, or Joey, and they go up to the North Woods of Maine. Joe takes all their savings and sells their house in Boston and buys a huge piece of property up in the North Woods that he spent one summer at this camp up there. So he buys it. So it's like a lodge and a home for the owners, as well as cabins that can be rented out. So that's how the story starts. And then it kind of jumps forward to when Joe Jr. now owns the camp himself. And he's married to a woman named Lucy, who's from the local area. And they have a daughter named Kate, who is in college. So they're running the camp. And there's also, I forgot his name now. There is also, I can't remember his name, but there's also a guy that works at the camp every year as a guide, fishing guide, taking people out on canoes, things like that. So Joe and Lucy are very happy. They love the camp. And there's another main character here, and that's Harry. Now, Harry is an extremely wealthy man who comes to the camp every summer. So it means almost as much to him as it does to Joe and Lucy because he's returned to it every year. It's a special place for him. He came to the camp after his wife died and kind of healed there. So it's very meaningful to him. And Harry is now dying of cancer and has come up to the lake and to the cabins for one last trip. He's in terrible shape. He's very frail. He is literally about to die. But this is his dying wish. And his son, helps him with that, to come back to the camp one last time and go out on a boat fishing. So that's kind of the setup, But as with any book that involves relationships and love and loss, there are all sorts of things that happen in these people's lives. There are secrets that are revealed. It's a wonderful story. And everyone in my book group enjoyed it. I really loved it. And I loved the setting. We haven't been able to travel at all this summer, or obviously all last year. This year it's because we're caring for my elderly father-in-law. So reading about the Northwoods of Maine, a place that I love too, was just, a wonderful way to spend August. So that's The Summer Guest by Justin Cronin. Highly recommended, and very different from The Passage, in case you're wondering. Also, in between this chunkster, I also fit in a short middle grade graphic novel. Well, it's probably appropriate for middle grade or teen. It's called The Girl from the Sea. So I'm not a huge fantasy lover. I don't really often read books like where there's a whole fantasy world, but I do sometimes enjoy fantasy when it's a real world setting and there are elements of fantasy. And that's the case with The Girl from the Sea. 15-year-old Morgan, shown on the cover there, has a secret. None of her friends or her family knows that she is gay. She hasn't had a chance to have a relationship yet, but she knows that she likes girls. And she lives in Canada off the East Coast on a small island. Now it's just she, her mother, and her brother because her father recently left. So the book deals with family dynamics too, and how the family is adjusting to this massive change, how it affects Morgan. Morgan has 4 very good friends from her high school, but they don't know her secret either. And then one night down by the water, Morgan meets Kelty. Let me get this straight. Her name is Kelty, and Kelty is a Selkie, which is like part human, part seal. She can turn human and be able to walk around on land after she is kissed by someone she loves. Now, she's seen Morgan before. She's kind of been watching her as she's grown up, and the girls share a kiss at the beginning. So Kelty is on land, and Morgan just tells her family and friends that she's visiting, but they really love each other and they can't tell anyone, or Morgan says they can't tell anyone. So that's the basic premise here. So it's got that element of fantasy, but it also deals with very real world issues. Let me show you the drawings because they're beautiful. This is a night scene down by the water when Morgan and Kelty first meet. And I had an advanced reader copy, so a lot of the rest of the book was in black and white, but I'm sure the final copy includes, more of those beautiful full color pictures. So I really enjoyed this. I would say it's appropriate for older middle grade kids or teens. It's a wonderful story. I forgot to mention the author is Molly Knox Ostertag, and I always enjoy her graphic novels. So that's The Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Ostertag. And then, because I was busy all month with Anna Karenina, I listened to 2 audios. It is still the last week of my annual Big Book Summer Challenge, so that was my focus all month. That's why I'm reading that hefty one. And both of my audiobooks were also big books. That is, their print copies are 400 or more pages. So on audio, I listened to After the Flood by Cassandra Montag. And I really enjoyed this book. It's a post-apocalyptic novel. It's set roughly 100 years from now, when not only have the sea levels risen so that the coast has disappeared. The coasts have disappeared in North America, but the water flooded all the way into the heartland. So the only land left, the only dry land left are the tops of mountains in Canada, the US, Mexico, all the way down to South America. So it's about a woman named Myra. She was living in Kansas, I think, when the floods came. And she and her 7-year-old daughter, Pearl, are on their own on a boat. Myra's grandfather built the boat, taught them how to fish, and basically prepared them for this. He didn't live to see it, but he's the one that got them set up. Myra has an older daughter named Ro, who was kidnapped just before the floods came to their home. And Myra's been looking for her ever since. So she and Pearl are on land at a trading post, and for the first time in 7 years, Myra finds a clue as to where her older daughter, Ro, is being kept or was taken. And it's way up in the Arctic. So they're on kind of the Pacific side, the oceans have kind of combined, but she has to somehow find a way to get over to the other side and all the way up toward the Arctic to find her daughter. And of course, she's desperate to find her. So they do connect with a larger boat and a group of people there. But in this world, you have to be careful who you trust. There are all kinds of pirates and raiders and bad guys out there. Apocalypses never bring out the best in humanity. So that's basically the story. It's Myra and her daughter Pearl searching for her older daughter Ro, along with this other group of people on a boat. And it was great. I was pulled into the story right from the beginning. It's very compelling, lots of good suspense. And it has a lot of heart too. And even though it sounds rather dismal and dark, there is a thread of hope in it, and it definitely ends on a hopeful note. So I liked that about it too. The other big book, audiobook that I finished in August was The Accidental Further Adventures of the 100-Year-Old Man. It's quite a mouthful. By Jonas Jonasson. Now this Swedish novel is actually a sequel. I think the name of the first book was The 100-Year-Old Man Who Crawled Out a Window, something like that. Anyway, this book picks up where that one ended. And I had not read the first book, but that was okay. I was still able to enjoy this. There was enough detail of what had happened before that I could just pick it up. This book is very much about, as the title suggests, adventures all over the world. And that's kind of the fun of it. So Alan is the 100-year-old man in the title, and his best friend Julius is with him on the island of Bali. So apparently they came into some money at the end of the first book. They're sort of living the life, although their money's starting to run out. Well, for Alan's 101st birthday, Julius surprises him with a hot air balloon ride. The hot air balloon crash lands in the ocean. The two of them get picked up by a North Korean ship that is carrying 4 kilograms of refined uranium. So you're seeing how this goes so far, right? So the two of them end up as gas prisoners of Kim Jong-un in North Korea. And Alan, in order to save their lives, decides to pretend that he is a nuclear weapons expert. So the leader of North Korea has Alan trying to teach their scientists all about nuclear weapons, which of course Alan knows nothing about. And they're trying to figure out how to escape from the situation. So I think that's right at the beginning, but I think it gives you an idea of what the whole book is like. It is weird, it's quirky, it is often outrageous, but it's also very, very funny. And I was quite surprised. It's also very informative. Not only has Alan lived for 100 years and lived through many historical events personally, but in this book, he discovers the wonders of a tablet. And so he's carrying his tablet with him everywhere and reading the current news. So there is a lot of current events, world history, global news, along with Alan's commentary all the way through. So it is kind of political. I saw in the reviews that some people didn't like that. I thought it was just hilarious. It's very funny. This was a great light audiobook to listen to after a post-apocalyptic one, and it just kept me laughing. So that's The Accidental Further Adventures of the 100-Year-Old Man by Jonas Jonasson. And that was it for August. Like I said, Anna Karenina kept me busy most of the time, which I hope to finish this week. But August was a great reading month, and I am enjoying Anna Karenina too. So that's it for me. Tell me what your favorite book was read in August. Mine was probably The Summer Guest. Of the books I finished in August, that was probably my favorite. So let me know down below in the comments what you read in August, what was your favorite, and what you think of the books that I finished.